If you needed to find the square root of 4, this would be pretty easy. The square root of 4 is either 2 or negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. This is something that everybody learns in elementary school or at the latest junior high school. Once there was a physicist that was working on this complex problem. He spent a lot of time on this, but the answer didn't make any sense. The answer didn't make any sense because the answer was the square root of a positive number, which means the answer had to be plus a number or minus a number. Because this idea contradicted what he thought was rational, he didn't think that this was the correct answer, even though the math was staring him directly in the face. It's kind of hard to argue with math. One of the paradoxes in physics is the idea of antimatter. Antimatter exists both theoretically and experimentally. The paradox is why nearly all the matter we see is matter and not antimatter. Even deeper is the idea that if there was as much antimatter as there was matter, then nothing would exist, as everything would cancel each other out. That we even exist is a paradox, and within this paradox is the deeper paradox of not nearly enough antimatter. Once upon a time, negative numbers were thought to be evil. A common idea in science is that when you first come up with an idea, nobody believes you. Everybody will say that you're crazy. But if you can be persistent enough, pretty soon people will start to believe this. People will start to understand this. People will start to accept this. But this usually takes a long time. And when people started thinking in terms of negative numbers, it was the same thing. Mathematicians could accept this, but most normal people thought that this idea was utterly insane. If you have 2 coconuts, that makes perfect sense. But how can you have negative 2 coconuts? You can walk through the forest with trees that you can count. But what is a negative forest? How many negative trees exist in the negative forest? Are there negative people living in the negative forest? Are these people all around you, but because they are negative, you can't see them? Suppose these people are watching you. That would make sense, since you are a positive person and everybody can see positive people. But what if you are always surrounded by these invisible people? What if these invisible people are watching everything you do? What if you are always being followed around by invisible scientists? What if these people are standing next to your bed while you sleep? What if these people are standing behind you right now? What if these people have access to your thoughts? What if these negative people have access to your dreams? What if it's these negative people that are the ones that are putting those voices into your mind? What if you are really living in an experiment and nothing around you is real? Cells have walls that keep the inside of the cell from the outside of the cell. DNA can only exist in the nucleus. RNA can only exist outside the nucleus. Electromagnetism very much serves as an invisible force, binding things together and keeping things separate. One theory is that there is a yet-to-be-discovered energy field keeping the antimatter universe from the matter universe, very much like a cell membrane. But if physicists keep building particle accelerators, they might inadvertently rip a hole in this invisible, yet-to-be-discovered boundary. If this happens, it would be like ripping open a cell wall, which kills the cell rather instantly. Because the answer to this guy's problem represented a square root, he had to accept it. But it was a square root of a mass, which meant the answer had to be positive matter and antimatter, which means that antimatter was discovered mathematically before it was discovered scientifically and physically. This means that there is some yet-to-be-discovered type of matter that is represented mathematically by imaginary numbers. Numbers that are the square root of a negative number. Imagine that you had a friend that was just as smart as you, but for some reason he hadn't gone through a normal modern education system. So he had no idea what it meant that the square root of 4 was both 2 and negative 2. How would you explain it to him? It's easy to see how 2 plus 3 equals 5. You first show 2 coconuts, then you show 3 coconuts, and then you count up all the coconuts and you get 5 coconuts. But how would you explain to somebody that if you multiply 2 negative coconuts negative 2 times, you get 4 coconuts? If you could multiply negative money negative times, you could get positive money. But since you can't do this with money, how are you supposed to be able to do this with coconuts or any other kind of nuts.